Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Lainey, and we're going to go through a posture in a quadruped position or tabletop, and it's stretching cat. So we've reviewed tabletop already before, and believe it or not, tabletop itself is an incredibly challenging position. And so now coming into something like stretching cat, Lainey's going to come to her hands and knees. And as a rule of thumb, things like knee padding may be necessary, so sometimes just folding the middle part of the mat, using something like a knee cushion or a gel pad to help pad the knees, sometimes can alleviate a lot of troubles in tabletop. So I want to encourage you as a teacher to definitely help your students get these available resources, but as a student, sometimes this is the solution that you need in order just to be able to do these postures where otherwise you would avoid them. So remembering as a review, the knee is underneath the hip and the wrist is underneath the shoulder. So oftentimes students will comment about having wrist pain in a pose like table, especially once you start taking limbs off the floor. And I want to remind you to definitely review and take part in the wrist stretches that we have in this Asana video library to help aid and couple into tabletop postures and sequencing. But also as a reminder, most of the things we do are flexion of the wrist. They're not extension. So all these muscles through the palm and through the wrist and carpal tunnel and into the forearm and into the elbow are very short and tight. So now, just a flat palm, you are stretching this. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. So this is a pose all in itself, and often as a teacher as well, we forget about cueing our students the importance of this posture and what it's doing, and so I just want to reemphasize that. But in the meantime, if students are kind of complaining or that their wrists hurt or that they're really just kind of cautious around that, rolling up the top part of your mat to have a little bit of a cup for the wrist, or using something like a, hold on, let me go grab it here real quick. Using something like a grippets, you can tell this is candid here, using something like a grippets allows you now then, we'll have Lainey demo it here really quick, that now it takes that pressure off the wrist. So if you've had students that have had carpal tunnel surgery or have had something where it's like, okay, they definitely need some assistance, these work amazing. They come in sets of 2. I would say use both, don't just use one, and that can definitely help get you through that transition period, whatever it may be with the wrist. Okay, so we're going to come into a tabletop position, and I just want to, again, remind you, Lainey has very hypermobile joints. So for her to press the arm straight, she's in hyperextension. So that's not really an option for her. So she actually has to keep a little bend in the elbow, and she's going to have to just continue to work to kind of shorten up the muscles to make up for that overstretched connective tissue, which is a challenge in itself. But in tabletop, folds of the elbows are going to be forward. So it's an external rotation with the arms as you try to stay planted into the hands. The hands don't move. That in itself is a wrist stretch. Bonus. Keeping the broadness to the upper back, rib cage is lifted, pelvis is in neutral. So if I have someone that's kind of saggy and sloppy in table or into stretching cat, I can just simply come underneath with my forearm and kind of lift up the rib cage to create a nice broadness for the back. All right, so the idea with stretching cat is all about stability. So from shoulder and hip to shoulder and hip. Even though limbs, 1 or 2 limbs, may be up off the floor, we want to keep a balance of stability so we're not wiggling and wobbling or more commonly dumping into the base shoulder. We want to really press away and create stability in the core and in the shoulder girdle. Okay, so as we move into something like stretching cat, I like to work with the leg first. So nice deep breath in here. Lainey's going to slowly extend her right leg back so that the big toe, she's going to start on the floor. So her big toe is barely on the floor. So I like to try to remind my students to not rest, because then it kind of mentally gives us this idea that we're going to kind of clunk down here and hang out. No, I want you to be on high alert. Inner thighs stay engaging, so the glute max, the lower part of the glute, not the outer hip, is working hard to lift the leg. The leg only gets to lift, when it does, as high as the lower belly can stay stable. So to bring the leg up and to dump the belly is not what we want to do. We are stretching, not arcing. So we're going wall to wall here. All right, now here's where the real challenge is. Staying broad through the back, slowly take the opposite arm out to T. So she's going to bring her left arm out to T without dumping into the right shoulder. How do I know what that looks like? usually there's winging in the scapula, or you can see a significant dump. Simply telling them to push down into the palm, or doing it yourself, you're going to feel this instant broadness. Keeping the shoulders square with the floor is going to help you use more oblique, which is great, and also create stability in the shoulder girdle. I can't emphasize this enough. When we have good hip and core strength, we instantly have good core stability. So this would be one variation. She could also try to take the leg up off the floor. Again, keeping the inner thighs engaged. She's going to feel glute and hamstring, keeping the hips square. And if I needed to adjust her, I'd simply come over to her and have her kind of roll the hip down just by striking my fingertips across her outer side of her thigh. Toes point to the floor, heel points to the ceiling. All right, if she wants to change that arm variation, she's going to bend and extend, comb her hand through the hair, and imagine like a thumbs up. So she can even make a fist with her fingertips and push her thumb to the ceiling without flaring in the rib cage. So the upper back stability can only be present when you have good core stability. If I don't have good core stability, now I look like the letter U or macaroni noodle. If this is too much, how do I know that? Usually the arm is hanging down by the chin. It's not up by the ear. So at that case, she's going to strike her arm back out to T. Same muscles, just depends on where your body's at. To come out, exhale, slowly lower the limbs down, and bring it back into tabletop. Awesome. So then she would do the opposite side. Nice deep breath in, extend the leg, big toe barely rests on the floor, and then slowly extend the arm either alongside the ear or at T, as long as we can stay square. As long as I can keep the arm up by my ear. This is the fine variation. Otherwise, strike the arm to T. And as a teacher, I often guide people back to T, and I just remind them, I want you to use the right muscles. I'm not concerned with what right pose you do. And then same thing again, that back leg can come off the floor. If you need to, keep both arms on the floor. If you need to, keep the toes down and just lift the arm. You can do any combination of that to your liking. Again, pressing broad through the base arm. Slowly bring your limbs down, exhale. And then on the next exhale, sit back onto your heels. You can just do a gentle devotional. Let the back stretch. Take a couple breaths here. Great job.